I'm going to introduce CyberSpy. He is a former member of a great band called White Stripe. No, Masters of Deception, and they were fantastic back in the day. He's been hacking and freaking since 1982. So
that was back when you had to log into the internet with an abacus.
Yes, they didn't even have abacuses back then. You had to
stone chisel.
Right, and everything was made out of asbestos. You had to walk uphill both ways to get the asbestos to make your tablets to use the internet.
Right.
And it was all gopher.
Yeah.
Fucking gopher. It's not a good idea. God damn. God, Archie! Sorry. God.
You're gonna be blown up now. You just skip all that and do your own bio.
First BBS, 1983. Apparently, year after he was born. No, just kidding. He started his first BBS. He's going to tell us probably a little bit about that, I'm sure. And now he's currently president and CEO of Spy Tech Industries. This is the guy who, if you're ever wondering, if you're ever sitting in a bathroom stall in a restroom at a truck stop and you're wondering, is there a camera in here? Yes, there is.
It's in the seat.
And he's the one who put it there. So
he's going to talk a little bit about the frack.
Absolutely. So without further ado, CyberSpy, everybody.
Hey, everybody doing? Oh, it's not even on.
Turn on. Works better than that.
Yeah, it's good. How's everyone doing? Like Al said, I'm going to give a talk on From Here to Eternity. And basically what that is a chronology of the freaking and hacking microcosm. How we started when everything was elite way back in the day to everything now with e-this, e-that, eBay, e-online, everything is e-blog, e-whatever. So we're going to go through the whole history of the important things all the way up to today and how even now the media call everybody a hacker when they're not. Script kiddies are not hackers, as we all know. DDoSing a server, not hacking. But yet in the media, they call everybody in one large group hacker. It's not the case. What was it like way back in the day? What was it like before there were cyber crimes and they couldn't really charge us with anything? That's what we're going to go through. Originally my talk was going to be longer and more interactive. And then I said let there be light. And behold, there was. But that's all changed around. So some of this I'm going to have to skip. Some of it I'm going to go further in depth on. And afterward, I'm going to have a panel discussion. So if you have any questions of anybody or anything in particular, any questions of how things went down, feel free to ask me, and I'll go through it with you. Like I said, I want to dispel some myths. I want to give a sense of atmosphere and behind the scenes. What was going on way back then? What was it like before broadband, cable, DSL, when you had a 110 baud acoustic modem? Anybody remember any of those?
I did that, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. So you know what I'm talking about. So people like you, I want you to go, oh my God, I totally remember that. And for some of the younger hackers out there, I want to invigorate you. Because there's so much happening right now that the things that went on in the 80s, the late 70s, and the early 90s can all be happening right now. It's a brave new world out there, especially going on the theme that Al and Yuri were talking about of globalization. And with a global economy and a global world now, there's a lot more we can do now with 1 billion people online than we could back in the early 80s with 110,000 people online. So that's where we're at. Basically everything starts 1642. Blaise Pascal develops a mechanism called the Pascalini to calculate with 8 figures carryings of tens, hundreds, and thousands, etc. In honor to his scientific contributions, the name, as everybody knows, was given to various things, one of them being a programming language called Pascal. That's a picture of the original machine that he built. 1791, Charles Babbage becomes known as the father of computing. But basically, he's the inventor of the first universal digital computer with a design of an analytical machine which used Jacquard punch cards. Now, Microsoft originally started, their first software was on punch cards. So that tells you how long that lasted from 1791 to the late 70s. That's a picture of the machine. Down, see, I wish there was that less light, but down here at the bottom is a picture of the punch card. Same year, 1791, Joseph Henry demonstrates long-distance communication by sending an electric current over 1 mile of wire to activate an electromagnet which caused a bell to strike. Thus, the electric telegraph was born. This is a picture of the device right down here. 1858, Cyrus Westfield was chiefly responsible for laying the first underwater telegraph cable, which is the transatlantic cable. This is a picture. They cut off a piece and it's on a museum. That's what it looks like. 1858, Elisha Gray and Alexander Graham Bell, both at the same exact time, built devices that could transmit speech electrically, what we call a telephone. Both men rushed their designs to the patent office within hours of each other. Same exact day. Alexander Graham Bell got there first, he got the patent. 1911, founded in 1888 by Thomas Watson, IBM is incorporated. In the decades that will follow, IBM will become the leader in PC production and innovations. 1917, Gilbert S. Burnham and Major Joseph Mugborn invent one-time pad, which is considered the most secure encryption algorithm ever devised, and is the only one, even today, it can be called the perfect encryption scheme. Anybody heard of this device? One person. 1936, Alan Turing, considered the father of computer science, introduces the Turing machine. The Turing machine is an abstract machine introduced to give a mathematical, precise definition of algorithm or mechanical procedure. 1947, the first computer bug is found when a moth is found trapped between relay points of the Mark II Icon calculator while it's being tested at Harvard. The operators have fixed the moth right down here to the computer log, and it says first actual case of a bug being found. But that's a picture of the actual paper they put it to. In 1947, the first transistor was developed by William Shockley and his research team of John Bardeen and Walter Bratton. Right down there. 1952, Grace Murray Hopper, a mathematician and pioneer in data processing, is credited with devising the first compiler. She helped develop the Flowmatic programming language and the common business-oriented language COBOL for the UNIVAC 1. 1954, Fortran programming language is developed by John Backus. Fortran is the world's first higher-level computer language. 1958, Lisp programming language is developed by John McCarthy. Lisp is the world's second higher-level computer language. 1958, in response to the Soviet Union launching Sputnik, the U.S. scrambles and establishes the DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Okay, now we get to the 60s. Free love, dawn of the age of Aquarius, etc. Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon are in office. But here's what's going on behind the scenes. This is everything that the regular world is seeing, but what's going on in the underground? And that's what we're going to start getting into right now. 1960, telephone calls for the first time are switched by computers, which ends the need for the woman behind the switchboard.
And women are free.
Women are never free. 1962, the Bell 103 becomes the first commercial modem. Made by AT&T, the modem boasted data rates up to 300 bits per second. Modulation obviously being, or modem being modulation, demodulation. I kind of had to cut that out because I think you guys all know what that is. 1963, Dartmouth College incorporates the introduction to the use of computers as a regular part of the liberal arts program. That's the first college to have a comp sci. ASCII, American Standard Code for Information Interchange, is created by Robert Beamer. ASCII consists of 128 unique strings of ones and zeros and permits machines from different manufacturers to exchange data. 1963, Douglas Engelbart, it's the first mouse. It was made out of wood, and it had two gears perpendicular to each other, so as you moved it, it would wing that way and that way. You couldn't go diagonal. You could go up or you could go down. 1964, Thomas Kurtz and John Kemeny create BASIC, Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code. Computer programming language is an easy-to-learn language for their students at Dartmouth College. 1965, Ted Nelson coins the term hypertext, which refers to text that is not necessarily linear. 1967, Alan Shugart of IBM creates the first floppy disk. Now that actually is subjective, because some people say it wasn't, most people say it is. 1968, Intel is founded by Robert Noyce, Gordon Moore, and Andy Grove. 1969, the ARPA, Advanced Research Projects Agency, originates the ARPANET. A service designed to provide efficient ways to communicate for scientists. Bolt, Baranek, and Newman, who won an ARPA contract to design and build a network of interface message processors, IMPS, which act as gateways to other mainframes. Within a few days of delivery, machines at UCLA and Stanford link up for the first time, and ARPANET is founded. This is the beginning of the internet. Like I said, I'm going to skip through a lot of this. So, CompuServe time sharing service is founded and later becomes the first online service to offer electronic mail capabilities. Intel makes the announcement of a much larger RAM, random access memory chip, which boasts 1 kilobyte of capacity. Imagine getting a 1 KB piece of RAM. Now this is important. This is where 1969, Bell Labs, AT&T, they drop out of Multics, the Multiplex Information and Computing Service project, a system which was supposed to support 1,000 online users can barely handle 3. Out of the ashes grows the most influential operating system in history, Unix. Ken Thompson, Dennis Ritchie, and others start working on Unix at Bell Labs. Unix is a portable, multitask, and multi-user computer operating system designed with the goal of allowing several users to access the computer simultaneously. Ken Thompson writes the first version of Unix for the PDP-7, Program Data Processor, in 1 month while his wife was on vacation. Imagine that. It does all that in a month. That's what happens, Jury, when a woman goes away. He allocates 1 week each operating system function, the kernel, the shell, the editor, and the assembler. He does this on a machine with 4K of 18-bit words. In 1969, the first computer hackers emerged at MIT. Now this is where the term hacker truly comes from. Basically what happened, they borrowed their name to describe themselves off of a model train group who used to hack electric trains and modify them to do things they couldn't. So these first computer guys worked on the mainframe, so we need to come up with a name for ourselves. Well, they were modifying the mainframes and modifying software, so they called themselves hacks or hackers. And that's actually originally where the word hacker comes from. Joe Ingracia, aka the Whistler, Joy Bubbles, High Rise Joe. He's a blind mathematics student at University of South Florida. In the late 1960s, discovers that he could whistle into a payphone the precise pitch which would trip phone circuits and allow him to make long-distance calls at no cost. Joe will later become known as the father of phreaking. The first RFC, Request for Comments, is published by Steve Crocker while at UCLA, and AMD is founded by Jerry Sanders. 1970s, this is the birth of the hacker subculture. This is everything going on in the mainstream. We have Nixon, Carter, and Ford were in office, the Paris Peace Accords, disco and leisure suits, people watching the Brady Bunch, All in the Family, sitting underneath black lights while on their beanbag chairs. But what was going on behind the scenes? What was going on in the underground? This is where it all starts to happen. Especially now that Joey Bubbles, he could whistle, and he starts telling all these other ham operators what's going on and how he can do it. Well, now, phreaking comes around. 1970, DEC introduces the famous PDP-11, which is considered to be one of the best designed mini-computers ever. And many of these machines that you see over here, they're still in use today, and some of the best hackers in the world cut their teeth on these Dash 11s. They're almost impenetrable. When you think of the Gibson in the movie Hackers, it's the PDP. 1971, Les Ernest releases the Unix command Finger to finger information on other users who are on the network. 1971, Ray Tomlinson of Bolt, Baranek, and Newman, who are contracted by ARPA to create the ARPANET, writes the first email program and is used on ARPANET. He chooses the @ symbol to separate users' names and email as the first email messages are being sent between computers. John Blankenbaker designs the first personal computer, the Kenback 1, and places an ad in Scientific American. The Kenback 1 has 256 bytes of memory and sells for $750. John Draper now. Everybody knows who John Draper is.
He's watching me poop.
That's exactly what he was. He'd just come out of the Air Force. He served in Vietnam. And he's a big ham guy. So he learns from one of his blind friends that a toy whistle given away inside Captain Crunch cereal generates a 2600 hertz tone, the same high-pitched tone that accesses the AT&T long-distance switching system. Draper builds a device called a blue box that when used in conjunction with the whistle and sounded into the phone receiver allows phreakers to make free phone calls. So it wasn't the whistle alone, you needed the blue box with it. But he didn't come up with the idea on his own. If it wasn't for him being a ham radio operator, none of that would have happened. And it wasn't Joey Bubbles, by the way, it was another blind guy who was friends with Joey Bubbles. 1971, Esquire magazine publishes the article Secrets of the Little Blue Box, with instructions for making a blue box. Wire fraud in the United States escalates and freaking is now born. This is the original blue box, and what you would do if anybody's never seen one, this is the audio device, and you would put that to the mouthpiece of the old phones, and that's your punch pad right up there. And what you do is you put this part down on the plate at the bottom of the phone, just wire that up, that way it could be discreet it was in front of you. 1972, Unix computer operating system was rewritten in C, which in essence opens the door for porting to other chipsets. The NCSA develops the Telnet application, which is used for remote logins to other computers. The Internet Working Group is founded to govern the standards of the developing network. Vinton Cerf is the chairman and is known as the father of the Internet. I'm going to get to that actually. That's coming up, but I do have a special part just for that. 1972, Abbie Hoffman. Anybody know who Abbie Hoffman isn't? If anybody doesn't know who he is? Well, he's one of the most famous counterculturists of the early 70s, one of my personal heroes. And one of the main things he did for us as hackers and freakers is he helped found the Youth International Party Line newsletter. Hoffman's publishing partner, Al Bell, changed YIPL newsletter's name to TAP, for Technical Assistance Program. Anybody heard of TAP magazine? It all came about because of Abbie Hoffman. Now, Abbie Hoffman actually had to go into the underground, but for other reasons. It wasn't related to freaking or hacking. But the FBI had it in bad for him. 1973, number of ARPANET users is estimated at 2,000. In 2005, it was estimated the 1 billionth user went online. Gary, the man who could have been Bill Gates, Kildall, begins development of CP/M operating system. Is there anybody who doesn't know who Gary Kildall is? You don't know who he is? Get with me later about it. It would have been in there, but had to cut it short. Basically, IBM went to him. They wanted him to work on some things. He'd rather be flying in his plane, so they went to Bill Gates instead. Microsoft got the gig. We all know how it went from there. Intel's chairman Gordon Moore publicly reveals a prophecy that the number of transistors on a microchip will double every year and a half. Okay. This revelation will later be known as Moore's Law and will hold true for more than 20 years. With 60 megabytes of storage, IBM introduces the Model 3340 Winchester sealed hard disk. That's the predecessor for all current hard disk drives. FTP is introduced, which makes transfers of files between network computers a standard. The first international ARPANET connections are made to the University College of London in England and Norsar in Norway. This is in 1973. Okay, college kids Oak Tobark and Berkeley Blue launch a home industry making and selling blue boxes. Now these two names, Oak Tobark and Berkeley Blue, I want you to remember those names because these two people, who you might not know who they are right now, are going to have a huge, huge impact on the computing world in just a couple of years. TCP/IP developed by a group headed by Vinton Cerf and Robert E. Kahn. Prolog developed at the University of Lumini-Marseille in France by Alan Colmarar. I don't even know the last name. Introduced a new paradigm of logical programming and is often used for expert systems and AI programming. The TV typewriter designed by Don Lancaster provided the first display of alphanumeric information on an ordinary television set. It used $120 worth of electronics components. The original design included 2 memory boards and could generate and store 512 characters as 16 lines of 32 characters. A 90-minute cassette tape provided supplementary storage for about 100 pages of text. Now, 1973, Martin Cooper makes the first public telephone call placed on a portable cell phone. Now, these aren't the original cell phones, but they're the first portables. Those are the big white brick-looking devices. You might have seen them. That was 1973. Martin Cooper is now known as the father of cell phones. It's not accurately true, but he's the father of portable cell phones. The first major shell was born in 1974, which was named after inventor Stephen Bourne. The shell is a program, everybody knows what the shell is. Clip 4, the first computer with a parallel architecture. MCM70, the first personal computer to be available commercially released by microcomputer machines. It failed commercially. Introduction of the 8080, an 8-bit microprocessor from Intel. Now arguably this is the microprocessor that started the microprocessor revolution. First in the line of processors that led to the current most used processor architecture, the 80x86 and Pentium series. It ran at a clock frequency of 2 megahertz and 0.64 MIPS. Motorola announces the MC6800 8-bit microprocessor. It is more easy to implement than the 8080 because it only needs a single power supply to operate and does not need support chips. Unlike the 8080, it is sold not as much as a general purpose number cruncher computer, but more as a control processor for industrial control and a peripheral processor. Motorola engineers Chuck Peddle and Bill Mensch leave after completing work on the Motorola 1600 CPU enjoys MOS Technology Inc. The MITS Altair 8800, the second commercially available personal computer, is released. In December 1974, an article in Popular Electronics invited people to order the kit for the computer. Despite the limited memory of 256 bytes and limited processing power, around 200 were ordered on the first day. 10,000 were shipped at a kit price of $397. I'm going to skip the rest and kind of hurry through all this. 1975, Bill Joy develops the C-Shop. Atari's home version of Pong begins on. How many people here had a Pong? 1975. Homebrew Computer Club has its first meeting. First microcomputer implementation of BASIC by Bill Gates and Paul Allen. It was written for the MITS Altair, the first personal computer. Unix is marketed in 1975 for the first time. Norwegian company Micron releases Micro 1, the first single board computer. Microsoft, founded by Bill Gates and Paul Allen. MOS Technology Inc. releases the 6501 CPU. IBM 5100 released. Zilog is founded by ex-Intel employees. David Boggs and Robert Metcalf invent Ethernet while working at Xerox. 21-year-old Bill Gates writes a letter titled An Open Letter to Hobbyists. But basically what this is Bill Gates posted a letter and he condemned open source. And pretty much said anybody that works on or supports open source software is essentially a pirate. And these hobbyists are doing the wrong thing with computers, that everything should be sold, nothing should be free, and no code should ever be released to anybody. This is obviously to preface for everything that's going to happen with Bill Gates and his control for the world. The paper New Directions in Cryptology is published by Whitefield Deff and Martin Hellman. It introduced a radically new method of distributing cryptographic keys, which went as far towards solving one of the fundamental problems of cryptography, key distribution. Okay, remember those two names I told you to remember, Berkeley Blue and Oak Tobar? Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak. Started off as freakers building blue boxes. When Draper told him, hey, I don't want you selling these things, the Woz was okay with it, Jobs wasn't. Now, if anybody's ever seen the two of them talk, Woz always comes up with ideas, and the other one wants to always sell it. So they took all their money they made selling these red boxes, and in the garage they come up with the Apple I, that wooden computer right there. One for hackers, where PCs and Apples be right now. Same year, Apple Computer introduces the first computer, the Apple I. 1977, Apple introduces the Apple II. 1977, the TRS-80 Model 1 Trash 80 begins selling. The operating systems that ran on TRS-80 were TRS-DOS and CP/M. I'm sure a lot of you remember these machines. This essentially, when the Trash 80 came out, as you all remember, this started the computer wars. The Atari 2600 game console is selling for $199. Bill Joy produces the computer operating system called BSD. Bell Laboratories promoted UC Berkeley, and other universities to use and extend the source code to their Unix operating system in its infancy. All programming languages are released by Alfred Aho. In 1978, Ward Christensen and Randy Suess create the first known BBS, CBBS, in Chicago, Illinois. This is an actual photo of the original BBS, and it says CBBS right on the side. When it started off, 110 baud. A lot of people in this room now using cable internet, 10 megabit downstream, imagine 110 baud. You could physically watch the letters one at a time coming across your screen. Bulletin boards with themes like Sherwood Forest and Catch-22 start springing up. Now, 78 is really important because as these BBS started coming up, and with the spread of phreaking going on, this was a great opportunity for phreakers and hackers and pirates to trade tips, share secret phone numbers, computer passwords, and even credit card numbers. Now, this is also the first time MCI codes are being traded. Does anybody remember MCI codes?
Yeah.
Okay, for those that don't, an MCI code, unlike a card number now, it was very stupid. You had one 800 number, and you would enter in a 6-digit or 5-digit code what you were billed to. Well, you could take a word dialing program or a scanning program and just randomly generate these numbers. If you got connected through, obviously the number was good. If the modem was disconnected, it was bad. By the end of the morning, you could have 100 numbers. So a lot of freaks would put these on these BBSs. And this is where, if you didn't have codes, you didn't have tips, you had to leave feedback to the system operator, the BBS. So when it's not like going on to a website and registering on a website. With the BBSs, you had to leave feedback. If the system didn't like you, if you didn't know people, if you didn't have skills or legitimate hack, you weren't getting in. TCP is split into TCP and IP. First report of freakers being kicked off the telephone systems for pranks. Louis DePayne, a.k.a. Roscoe, and Kevin Mitnick, a.k.a. Condor, meet over a ham radio frequency. This is 2 years before they start the Roscoe gang. Susan Thunder emerges on the scene. Does anybody know who Susan Thunder is? One person? Susan Thunder is important because she is the most famous and probably the best female freaker and female hacker that's ever existed. But what's funny about her, I shouldn't say funny, she's a hooker working in Hollywood. So Susan Thunder's a streetwalker, and what she became known for is she would sleep with military guys and take the passwords out of their wallet when they were sleeping, and that's how she started with the social engineering and the hacking. Now, the movie War Games was kind of based on some of the stuff that she could do, because she had the social engineering skills and she had the codes. Now, she couldn't launch a nuke on her own, but with social engineering, she'd probably call a silo and bullshit away and probably get somebody to do something. What's also important about Susan Thunder is she winds up linking up with Kevin and Louis, and she joins the Roscoe gang in 1982 with them. In 1984, she gets pissed off when Roscoe wouldn't sleep with her and goes into the same DEC networks and servers that they were on and started spewing out page after page on the printer, FU, FU, and she gave their names. Right after she did that, the feds were first tipped off to Kevin Mitnick, and that's where it all started for Kevin, because Louis wouldn't sleep with Susan.
Also,
Moral of the story is, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
and also, anything that you learn here, don't try it at home. And if you do, we're not responsible for anything that you choose to do, period. Here, outside, anywhere. Things that you learn here are for your own informational purposes only.
Yeah, this is strictly what was going on behind the scenes at the time. A lot of people know Susan, don't know she was a hooker. By the way, anybody know what she does now? She's still around, still alive, doesn't have AIDS, but she is a professional poker player in Vegas, and she's an ancient coin expert. You're all laughing. Hey, this is one of those little tidbits of info.
Now, how did you know about the AIDS thing?
About what? Because ironically enough, a couple of years ago, when they started doing those on-TV professional poker tournaments, she was on one of them.
And you had to ask her if she had AIDS?
Well, she didn't, but there was a magazine article about her. And if you get with me during the weekend, I'll show you a copy of that. I have it upstairs. Santa Cruz Operations is founded and becomes a Unix porting and consulting company. In 1979, Microsoft licenses Unix source code from AT&T and develops Xenix, which is soon overshadowed by MS-DOS. Microsoft calls their Unix operating system Xenix because they cannot license the Unix name. Usenet goes online. Usenet is everybody knows what Usenet is. Alan Sugar starts Sugar Technology, which will later become Seagate Technology, the largest disk drive company in the world. Brian Kerningham and Dennis Ritchie published the C programming language. The 80s, the early 80s, this is the golden age. This is where I first stepped into the scene. I'm about 10 years old. Things are really going on in the Reagan years. Live Aid happens, Boy George, Wham, Al was hanging around back then. The Cold War, Motley Crue, the Berlin Wall, Yuppies, Space Shuttle, everybody remembers all these things. A lot of which were around the early 80s.
David Hasselhoff.
Now we're going to get into what was really going on in the scene. 1980, 3.5-inch floppy drive and diskette are introduced by Sony. 1981, Adam Osborne develops the Osborne 1, which is considered by many to be the first portable computer or laptop, and weighs in at 24.5 pounds, which, coincidentally enough, is still 2 pounds shy of Elvin's laptop.
It is that heavy.
1981, the Sinclair ZX81 computer was sold for approximately $100. Who just said, oh?
Me, I had one of those. I had the one with the rollout keyboard.
That's exactly what I'm trying to get from everybody here. Everybody's kind of down. I'm trying to get in the mood
Sorry,
for the
I'm
weekend.
old. Hey.
No, that's a good thing. I'm trying to get everybody here to do the oohs and the ahs, because I know half of you people remember this.
Oceans of time.
Commodore Business Machine, CBM, starts shipping the Big 20. Home computer which sells for just under $300. That was my first computer right there. And that's where I got in the thing. You had the old, you had to plug the modem in there back through an etch board. You didn't have a disk drive, you had a tape drive.
Press play on tape 1.
That's it.
Did you have the speech module?
Load, comma 7, if everybody remembers that.
It's hot. I hated that thing.
What else was going on in 1981? The elk clone virus was the first computer virus found in the wild, and it was reputed to have spread from Texas A&M. Chaos Computer Club forms in Germany. DNS is conceived. While working at IBM and developing the PC's BIOS, David Bradley creates the code for Control-Alt-Delete. He's also quoted as saying, I may have invented Control-Alt-Delete, but Bill Gates made it really famous. The first mention of Microsoft is posted to Usenet. Microsoft acquires complete rights to Seattle Computer Products DOS, disk operating system, and names it MS-DOS. 1982, John Warnick and Charles Gesch found Adobe Systems. Hewlett-Packard introduces the first Unix called HPUX, which is early based on System 5. Sun Microsystems is founded by 4 27-year-old men. SGI introduces their Unix-like operating system called IRIX. Commodore ships the Commodore 64. Anybody remember the 64?
Yep.
Now, that was the first home computer with a standard 64K of RAM. And that was whopping back then. SMTP is published. William Gibson coins the term cyberspace. Now, Nick, you want to add something to this?
Yes, you have William Gibson for cyberspace, but you do not have...
I left out cyberpunk, so
for
please.
Cyberpunk, which is the genre of fiction, and in particular science fiction, for which William Gibson was writing...
Soapbox, come on, soapbox.
Don't get your Mona Lisa overdriving and not, alright?
I know it.
So, 2006, cyberspace gets put in its place. Professor Scott Phantom typed the first online smiley. 1982 was the first smiley, but we never used them back then. Anybody here in the early 80s, you ever use a smiley?
A fucking emoticon?
No, we never, and this is important.
It's like a character space.
Well, that's right, but this is really important. That's basically because of that. There wasn't enough space, but we never used those terms back then. So we're actually going to start getting into how did these smileys come about? Why are people doing it? How did BRB actually get put not online, but in people's verbal communication? You get to run, you go, oh, BRB. And people actually say this now.
I slap people who say that.
Syllables is actually saying that.
Yes,
It's like barbecue.
1983, the internet is formed when the ARPANET is split into military and civilian sections. In one of the first arrests of hackers, the FBI arrests 6 teenage hackers from Milwaukee, known as the 414s, after their area code. The hackers are accused of some 60 computer break-ins, including the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, to Los Alamos National Laboratory. One of the hackers gets immunity for his testimony. The other 5 got probation. And remember, in 1983, there were no cyber crimes back then. None of this was illegal. It was the Wild West. Richard Stallman starts to develop a free clone of Unix written in C programming language that he calls GNU. GNU is a recursive acronym for News Not Unix. Later, in 1991, the Herd kernel, first developed by the Free Software Foundation, would become GNU's official kernel. 1983, the movie War Games is released. More importantly than War Games,
Matthew Broderick?
Matthew Broderick, right after that, as a system of a BBS, everybody and their brother wanted a modem. Everybody and their brother thought that they could hop online and do it. Well, they couldn't. So, sysops like myself, Curvab over there, we actually had to lock down our BBSs. We called these people Christmas modemers. Does anybody remember that phrase of a Christmas modemer?
So
This is kind of like a script kidding. This is the first time that a slang was ever used, and we started separating elite and Christmas modemer. And it was, if your first time online was around December, you weren't getting on the board. This wasn't happening. Secret Service gets jurisdiction over credit card and computer fraud. Telnet Protocol is published. Richard Stallman makes the first Usenet announcement about GNU. Paul Macapetras posts RFC 882, which outlines how the domain name system will work. David Korn of AT&T releases the Korn shell. Tom Jennings develops FidoNet. Does anybody not know what FidoNet is? Okay. FidoNet was a front end. Sorry, Al. Sorry, buddy. FidoNet, if you ran a BBS, was a front end. And this would allow you to link. The way BBSs worked, it was one machine and wasn't connected to anything else. You would dial in. Well, FidoNet was on the front end. And it was a network of all these BBSs or other machines. And this would allow you, if you had mail, like my bulletin board, my first one was Kung Fu Castle. My most famous one was Lion's Fire. So if let's say you had in the kennel Lion's Fire and you wanted to give mail to somebody at the Magic Bus, for instance, you could give mail to somebody at the Magic Bus through FidoNet. This linked these BBSs together. And that's what FidoNet does. Well, many other things, but that was the most important thing.
Slow and not safe.
They dial into each other and just send a bulk of everything.
Right, they went by packets. You would set your time, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., etc., and it would send them all in packets at once, and then all the other ones would dial in, and it would just spread that way.
Right, it used to all be really slow and direct. You had to dial each one, but then it got sexy later on.
I really wanted to go further in depth with all this, but I got pushed forward, time restraints, etc.
Every BBS would know which BBS to talk to, so you wouldn't have to send it all to everyone.
First mention of Microsoft Windows is posted to Usenet in 1983. Apple Lisa, local integrated software architecture is introduced. The Lisa operating system featured multitasking and virtual memory.
And was $8,000.
1984, Apple introduces Macintosh System 1.0. Computer scientists Len Bossack and Sandy Lerner from Stanford University co-founded Cisco Systems. Antivirus software developer Fred Cohen introduces the term computer virus for the first time in 1984. Andrew Tannenbaum writes the first version of Minix. University of
Hasn't changed since. Not a lot of it.
The University of California, Berkeley releases version 4.2 BSD. Sony Corp versus Universal Studios, aka the Betamax case. It's finally heard in court. Does anybody know what that is, or not know what that is, rather? There's somebody that doesn't know what that is. Okay. Way back in the day, the VCRs, you had a unit called a Betamax. Okay? They were vying against Sony, who had another standard called VHS. But Sony's angle on it was, they were telling the companies making the Betamax, if you take these devices and put them in the home, it's going to end movies as we know it. People are never going to go to the movies. They're never going to do this. People are going to record off of television. They're going to do this and do that. It actually wasn't the case. It was a big smack in the face. It wound up being the other way around. Look at the movie industry now because of VCRs. But the first one was a Betamax. It was a little tiny, a smaller tape but thicker, and it could hold a lot more, better quality.
It was better quality.
Yeah, a lot better quality.
Now you're watching Howard the Duck, though.
Nothing helps Howard the Duck.
Right,
But hopefully some people in this room looked at that and said, oh my God, I so remember that.
Yeah, and actually this court case made, JVC had a competing standard, which was MRAP based. I don't know if you know the difference in how the tape wraps around the heads, but because of Sony being flagged as red tape and having to deal with Universal Studios, JVC just plugged right ahead with their shitbag MRAP technology. And that's why your VCR to this day sucks. So thank you, Universal Studios. Or Universal City Studios. Good job there.
Isn't this exactly what they're saying today, though?
About
Yeah, this is exactly what they're saying. But they're
PBS
actually
welcome to 1984.
but it's reversing this time around. The Canadians are turning out the other way.
Well, and that's what I said at the beginning of my talk. That's what I was trying to tell you. A lot of the things computer clubs is held in Hamburg, Germany. This is the very, very first hacker conference. Lex Luthor founds the Legion of Doom. Hold it. Anybody remember Legion of Doom?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Good old elevator.
Wait till the end of this talk, you hear my comments about good old Mr. Luthor. Cold of the Dead Cow forms in Lubbock, Texas, and begins publishing his e-zine. Eric Corley, a.k.a. Emmanuel Goldstein, begins regular publication of 2600. The Hacker Quarterly, right when Tab was putting out its final issue. But with Cold of the Dead Cow starting their magazine, Emmanuel Goldstein starting his, that's the start of the e-zine wars. And when Frat comes out in a few months, you were on two sides of you were on one side of the board. You were a Frat guy, you were a 2600 guy.
Frank would have gotten more traction if they had gotten their issues out on time.
Craig Nutter, a.k.a. Night Lightning, and Randy Tisler, a.k.a. Karen King, first published Frat in St. Louis. This is the beginning, or actually right after this, the Hacker's Handbook is published in the UK. Right after that happened, that's the start of the e-zine war. If you were a 2600 guy, you didn't associate with the frat guy. If you were a frat guy, you didn't associate with the 2600 guy, and around and around it went. Hacker wars.
That's why it took me till last year to be in 2600.
Yeah.
Unless you were me, I just slept with everybody.
The Free Software Foundation, FSF, is founded. C++ programming language is released. The National Science Foundation begins deploying its new T1 lines. Intel introduces the 8386, the i386 processor, which was the first processor to use 32-bit addressing. 1985, Symbolics.com is assigned and becomes the first registered domain name. Symbolics.com, which is still online right now, the very first website ever to exist. America Online incorporates under its original founding name, Quantum Computer Services. 1985, Apple introduces Macintosh System 2.0. Anybody remember that screen?
Oh,
Yeah, it's copyright violation.
I think they can bite me. 1985, the Commodore Amiga, Amiga 1000 is introduced. But actually there was an Amiga before that. Not many people had it. It was the Amiga 500. I had one too. That was my first Amiga, was the 500. One of the nice things about it is the Amigas were the first computer to use what they called real multitasking. It wasn't time slicing the way the 386s and Microsoft did it. You would have a bar, you can see it right up along here. It told you how much memory you had and how much was in use. And it did real multitasking. It wasn't time slicing.
Is that what you ran your BBS off of?
I wound up switching from a VIC-20 to a 64. I ran a 6485 for a while. And I co-wrote Teleguard. Anybody remember Teleguard BBS? I co-wrote that. Wound up becoming Renegade. Then it became Radioactive Teleguard.
Much of the code for the Amiga was stolen from Apple.
A lot of everything I did was stolen, just so you know.
Stolen.
Actually, yeah, right. It wasn't stolen. It was borrowed with no intent to return.
Yeah.
The other nice thing is you could have what was called a multi-node BBS. Multi-node meant you could have multiple modems in like a rack, the way you would have servers now. So you could have 13 lines on your BBS. And so when you went to the main menu, you went to the message boards or whatever, now you could do who is online on the BBS and see who else is on there and what they're doing. Or you go into a chat room. But the chat rooms were a lot different than they are now. If I had more time, I'd show you pictures of that. But I ran CNET when I had the Amiga. Anybody remember CNET? That's what I ran on my Amiga.
I had a stack.
1985, Microsoft releases Windows 1.0 and is initially sold for $100 for that. This is Windows, by the way. Notice the DOS startup.
Which it had until last year.
Yeah, it had Windows, but they were all like terminal Windows.
I have a copy of that.
1986, AIX, Advanced Interactive Executive, is released by IBM. While at the Fraunhofer Institute, MP3 starts. IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, was created to serve as a forum for technical coordination. U.S. Congress passes the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Now this is the origins of the cyber crimes and where they're going to start going after people now. Well, 86, War Games has been out. More people are on BBSs. Thousands upon thousands of BBSs littered all over the place. But now all these Christmas modemers started doing things on these BBSs they shouldn't have. Going back to their schools, telling friends about the BBSs, it was bad news. And now because of this, the government's going to start going after BBS owners.
Did you cover the crash of the AT&T Long Distance Network in any of these slides?
I did, but I had to change that.
Which was blamed on us.
It never happened, by the way. It was faulty equipment.
It was actually a faulty line of code in the signaling system that they were using.
I have other slides have it.
Yeah.
Like I said, this isn't my original talk. I'm doing this off my hip, on the fly. This isn't my original talk. U.S. Congress passes the computer. We did that. Well, following up a 75-cent accounting error in the computer logs at the Lawrence Berkeley Lab at the University of California, Berkeley, network manager Clifford Stahl uncovers evidence of hackers at work. 1986, Apple introduces Macintosh System 3.0. 1987, Brian Fox and Chet Ramey released Bash, Born Again Shell. Phil Katz starts work on PKArc, which will later be renamed PKZip, or the .zip extension. Anybody not know what zip is? Okay.
Hasn't changed since say no.
Internet Service Provider CompuServe introduces GIF, or graphics interchange format. Now this is the first time. Now back with the BBSs, all you could do was ANSI or ASCII graphics. JIP is going to start changing that because a protocol is going to come out called RIP. RIP is going to allow these VGA, remember that? RIP is going to allow these VGA graphics to come up on BBSs at 300 baud. But basically it's a precursor to what HTML will look like, or what websites will look like when you go to somebody's domain. I remember GIF?
Yeah.
I saw a GIF picture of you. Larry Wall releases Perl, Practical Extraction and Report Language. Decoder Magazine begins in Italy. The Computer Emergency Response Team, or CERT, is created to address network security. Herbert Zinn, a.k.a. Shadowhawk, a 17-year-old high school dropout, admits he broke into AT&T. Well, there were actually a lot of other things he admitted into, but I condensed this. Now, Zinn becomes one of the first people prosecuted under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986, which, among other things, makes it illegal to use another person's password. Now, this is what I was talking about. Now, all Shadowhawk did, Shadowhawk was bragging on the BBS, hey, I got these MCI codes, I did this, I did that. Feds wouldn't even got them. That's what I was talking about, people not knowing when to talk onto their high school saying what they did. Stump rule of thumb, never admit what you did.
And MCI codes got more people in trouble than anything else. Don't steal.
Apple introduces Macintosh System 4.0. Microsoft releases Windows 2.0, as initially sold for $100. Still looking like that. Now, has anybody ever seen Workbench 2.0 or Amiga OS?
Mm-hmm.
Never looked like that. 1988, Sony Philips CDR comes out. Open Software Foundation develops OSF1 Unix. Jarko Arkaniran starts IRC while attending the University of Oulu. 1988 is when IRC came out. When was the first time most of you came on IRC? You have to think about that. 1988 is when a lot of us were starting on IRC. Robert T. Morris Jr., a graduate student at Cornell University and son of a chief scientist at a division of the NSA, launches a self-replicating worm on the government's ARPANET, the precursor to the internet, to test its effect on Unix systems. That turns into the Mars worm. First mention of the Mars worm is posted to Usenet. Hacker Robert Riggs breaks into Bell South Computer Network and downloads a document that describes how the 9/11 emergency phone systems work. Kevin Mitnick secretly monitors the email of MCI Communications and Digital Equipment Corporation security officials. Now, 88 is the year of the Kevins. Kevin Polson, anybody know who that is? Or doesn't know who that is? Okay, Kevin Polson is probably the most famous phreaker that's ever been around.
He's not in Fight Club.
And basically, he and some friends, they would get together, and they would take over the phone systems of various radio stations, and they would win the loot. So, this is the year he did the infamous KIIS FM, or 102 FM, where if you're the 102nd caller, you won a Porsche by Friday. He jammed every single phone line and made sure he was the only phone call to come through. Why don't you been call for that, but I'll get into that. First National Bank of Chicago was the victim of a $70 million computer theft. The Department of Defense serves the links between the unclassified, severs the links between the unclassified military network, or MILNET, and the ARPANET. Now this is the early internet, and it's discovered that a hacker has broken into at least one MILNET computer. 1988, Apple introduces Macintosh System 6.0. 1989, the JPEG, Joint Photographic Experts Group, file format for image compression is adopted. This is the first time now, when GIF was around, it was 16-bit colors. JPEG, for the first time, you get a 32-bit color, or 16,000 colors or more. It was the first time you could ever do that. Fry Guy is raided by law enforcement. Police hunt for Legion of Doom hackers. Jude Milan, a.k.a. St. Jude, and Are You Serious? Published Monday 2000. Monday 2000 I put in here because Monday 2000 is what turns into Wired magazine. Bill Landreth starts out on Monday 2000. A lot of the big-time hackers were involved with Monday 2000. The authors that are around now started with Monday 2000. Remember Monday 2000, by the way? 5 West German hackers are arrested on espionage charges. 89, Kevin Mitnick is convicted of stealing software from DEC and long-distance codes from MCI. Again, like I was just saying, MCI codes, big trouble. They bring everybody down, but they were easy to get. Becoming the first person convicted under a new law against gaining access to an interstate computer network for criminal purposes. Tim Berners-Lee develops the protocols that will become the World Wide Web at the CERN Laboratory for Research in High-Energy Physics in Geneva. This is the picture of the very first web server that ever existed. If you can look at this sticker right here, it says this machine is a server, do not power down. He had to put that on there because up until this point, servers never existed. Nobody knew what one was. You had a mainframe, you had a PC. Servers didn't exist, so we had to tell the maintenance crew and the cleaning crew, this is supposed to be left on, leave it on. Now we're at the 90s. Bush Sr., Clinton, Simpson trial, Halley Bop, Extrasolar Planets, Backstreet Boys, Nirvana, consoles, Doom, MMORPGs coming out for the first time, World Trade Organization.
Hanson.
Left that out. There was a lot. I'm going quick, people, just bear with me. 1990, ARPANET ceases to exist. Alan Emtage and Phil Heelan create Archie. Anybody not know what Archie is? You know what Archie is, don't even try. It's an archiver. You can search things with command prompt, type in Archie, it's coming.
It's followed up by Veronica.
Yeah, actually it was.
Jughead.
But it was followed up by Veronica.
I know, and then later on Jughead.
Ron Rivas invents the hash function MD4, Message Digest algorithm 4. This will eventually turn into MD5. Mitch Caper and John Barlow found the EFF. Kevin Poulsen and Ron Austin hacked KIIS-FM to win contest. This is the second time they did it. Now, Kevin Poulsen didn't just do one radio station like people think. He did radio station after radio station after radio station. When all was said and done, I think he got something like 4 cars and $80,000, something like that.
That's how he was living, actually.
Yeah.
That's all the money that he, all of his income was stolen radio stations.
And the other thing he would do is somebody wanted a car, he would do the phone system and they would pay him to be the caller. They didn't give him the money, they wouldn't want to be in the caller. He didn't actually get the car and sell it to them.
How did they catch him? I mean, I wonder when...
He gets turned in. I'm going to get to all that.
Okay.
He gets turned in.
Okay.
He talks to the wrong people.
4 members of the Legion of Doom were arrested. They start ratting. The Secret Service launches Operation Sun Devil. Everybody know what Operation Sun Devil is?
No. I was in Phoenix when it went down.
Okay.
Running a BBS.
Operation Sun Devil was a multi-jurisdiction, nationwide hunt for hackers in 1990.
Steve Jackson Games.
Yep.
Steve Jackson Games gets raided. I was going to go further in depth with this. If you want to know more about it or what was going on, get with me during the weekend. The Great Hacker War begins. Does anybody not know what the Great Hacker War was? This was originally going to be the bulk of my talk because I had to live through this. I got in trouble in this time. A lot of stuff went on. Basically, fiber optic had issues with Eric Bloodaxe. But that wasn't what started the Great Hacker War. Greg Roggins is the person who actually started the Great Hacker War. And he made comments that when the Masters of Deception, when we started in New York, we were multi-ethnic. Legion of Doom were all Southern white guys. So for the first time, you had a black guy, a Hispanic guy, a Jew, you had all kinds of people involved with Masters of Deception. And Chris Groggins was talking a lot of shit on the phone. And when this one went down, there were peacemakers in the middle trying to stop it in the last minute. But Chris Groggins was on the phone talking shit, saying he was going to turn us in, nothing but niggers, spics, Jews. This is the exact wording he used, but we were on a teleconference. He didn't know we were listening in. That is what started the Great Hacker War. I will go later on this weekend and tell you all the things that happened during the Great Hacker War. It lasted 2 years, but it was over pretty quick as far as the main blow, where everything with the Legion of Doom was in Texas. So they were a Hydra. So if you wanted to stop the heads of the Hydra, the only ways out, there weren't that many networks. So everything that was in Texas, you had to go on the outside. They had to go through certain networks. So by taking control of the networks that people use to get in and out of Texas, we could therefore control what the Legion of Doom was doing. That was the initial blow. We took over their own systems. They couldn't do anything. But it did last 2 years, and it was pretty bad. The Legion of Doom turns code. They start turning in everybody. Fiber optic. Is everybody in Master Deception wound up getting arrested for one thing or another because the Legion of Doom went to the feds. But Master Deception did win the war, just so everybody knows. 1991. Paul Linder and Mark McKeel released Gopher. Philip Zimmerman releases PGP, Pretty Good Privacy. Internet ban on businesses lifted. 1991. Now this is going to play an integral part of eternity. Because everybody knows when business gets involved in anything, they fuck it up.
Not just a little.
Lumatuli releases Lynx. Lynx is a text-based web browser. Rumors circulate about the Michelangelo virus. It was supposed to be released on the 517th anniversary of his birthday.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. Solaris 1.0 is released by Sun. Python programming language by Guido van Rossum is released to Usenet. Tim Berners-Lee announces the World Wide Web project to Usenet in 1991. Linus Torvalds publicly releases Linux version 0.01. The source is 64 kilobytes. Linus also announces Linux on Usenet. Now, just so everybody knows, Linux wasn't the original name. Does anybody happen to know what the original name for Linux was?
I hate buggies.
Pay attention to Hacker Trivia this weekend. No, what Linux originally was called, it was called Freenix. And it stood for Free, Freaks, and Unix. When it went to get published, his friend didn't like the name and put his name in with it, and it just stuck, Linux. So it's for Linus and for Unix. But it was originally called Freenix, with a PH. Former Legion of Doom members, Patrick K. Grupo, who's Lord Digital, and Bruce Franker, who's Dead Lord, they found Mindbox. Mindbox was a big ISP up in New York. And this is going to prove fatal to a lot of members of Master's Deception, because he's going to blatantly say that we did things to his ISP that never happened. Kevin Polson is captured. He went 17 months on a run after all those radio station pranks. He's captured and indicted for stealing military documents the first time. They still didn't know he was involved with the radio stations, but he was indicted for stealing military documents. Police arrest Justin Tanner Peterson in Dallas for possession of a stolen car and find computer files that lead to charges that he broke into TRW computer system. The General Accounting Office reveals that Dutch teenagers gained access to Defense Department computers during the Persian Gulf War. DOS version of AOL released.
Nice.
And the World War.
We're going to get to that. Apple introduces Macintosh System 7.0. 1992, the term surfing the internet is coined by librarian Gene Armour-Polly. 386 BSD 0.0/0.1 released by co-creator Bill Jolis. Minix creator posts the infamous Linux is obsolete newsgroup posting on comp.os.minix. Anybody know about that? That's pretty much the same thing that Bill Gates did, but Andy Tannenbaum put this thing about how bad Linux is, etc., etc., etc. Release of the movie Sneakers. Now more of the public wants to get involved. Mindbox opens to the public. Hackers break into GAFB, NASA, and Carey. 5 members of Master Deception are indicted. 1993. What's my time limit now? I hear somebody whispering in the back. Where are we at?
8:26.
Somebody an hour and a half already?
Yeah.
You want to stretch it even further?
Yes, sir. No.
Alright. I've dragged this on as long as I could. It didn't go the way I wanted it to go. I'm going to break it off. Probably could finish it up another time. If anyone wants to know the stories of what went on with the Great Hacker Wars, I'm not going to say it publicly here. Get with me during the weekend. Anytime throughout, I have a lot of stuff up in my room. I have some old red boxes, blue boxes to show everybody. I'll tell you what I was arrested for, what things were like. I need a cigarette. I'm sure other people do. Al, you want the mic?
Yeah.
But I'm going to pick off, again, from 1990, and we'll go forward. But a lot of stuff did happen. But one of the things I wanted to go through, real quick, is the next 1993 right here. AOL gives its users access to Usenet. Eternal September begins. Does anybody know what Eternal September is? The September never ends? Okay, basically what that is it's kind of like Christmas Mortimer. Now, Usenet was elite. BBSs were elite. We had a certain way we spoke, a certain way we did things. AOL opened its doors, and what happened is the colleges, all the freshmen would get on the network, and they would start using Usenet. They wouldn't know how to use it. So they would be new, they wouldn't post the right way, and it took them a long time to learn it. When AOL opened its doors to Usenet, we hackers dubbed it Eternal September based off of the freshmen. So they had legions of people flooding onto Usenet where all the elite people were. They didn't know what was going on. They started changing how they spoke, started changing acronyms, started using slang that was never used. I won't go into this further, but if you get a chance, Google for Eternal September, or look on Wikipedia for Eternal September. It's a pretty good read. I'm going to give it to you for now. I'll pick up one up later.
You sure?
Yeah.
You look like you love talking up here. You've been talking forever. let's give it up for Soccer 5. We wasn't ready, and we put him on. He did a great job. But what we're going to do is we're going to have just a 10-minute question and answer panel. We're going to answer any questions that you may have about this talk, about this time period, or anything in general if you want to know.